It is the second podcast of the year of 2025, FX Unfiltered. And today's show, we're going to talk about Deegan. And is he struggling? What he said on the podium was a little disheartening. Tomac, should he never retire? Because he's probably the best he's ever been. Sexton, does he need to have a new manufacturer because the KTMs are going out of business? Juju, maybe he's riding that bandwagon. Who knows? But that is what's coming up in this week's Monday live podcast show. And where is my intro here? Let's go. All right, I stopped the intro early because I figured, let's just get going with it. We don't need to look at 30 seconds of shows about to start when it's already started. Good morning, Coach. How you doing?
I am doing great, man. I am so excited to chat about this weekend's racing at next level. There's no two ways about it. I thought the track layout was good, allowed for a lot of passing. Want to get your opinion on that left-hander that was kind of like that sand turn where I think it was Jordan. Who was it? Was passing out on the outside there. But a lot of the things, ironically, that you brought up on your track walk all came to fruition. So congratulations, and congratulations on getting your show into the racer head. That's a huge accomplishment as well. So congrats, bud.
Yeah, no, thank you. Davey, he reached out to me and was like, dude, I really liked your post-race track walk. And I told him, I was like, man, yeah, there was a lot of convincing to try to let them, because the big thing was, do I want to go on the podium? And I'm like, no, I don't want to go to the podium. I want to look at the dirt. I don't care what you got. 87 different cameras over there. What am I going to do? I'm not going to get anything new. And I don't care that they're on the podium. I want to see how they're riding. Again, I'm a tutorialist for the fans. I teach the fans. So I have no business being over on the podium. I want to go see the dirt. Let me go look at the dirt.
Well, I think that's the cool part right there is you're like, I don't know if somebody who's a new follower of Johnny's, I don't know if you realize how many pro tip videos he has out there. And Johnny, wasn't that the genesis of the whole channel?
Yeah, I mean, I know we're talking about the Supercross, but 1,000-foot view of how started is I had my crypto channel, and I really hated dirt bikes at the time, long time ago, because I got hurt. Anybody that knows my story knows how bitter I was about stuff. But then I was getting ready to have a kid, and I was going finally when I could walk again. Because it took me almost 2 years to basically learn how to walk again. I was going, man, while I still have the ability, I'm going to kick myself if I don't give away, because truthfully, again, I believe a man needs three things. He needs somebody to compare himself to. He needs somebody to look up to, like a mentor to help shape him. And then he needs somebody to teach. And so I was trying to turn my entire life around, and I said, I need to teach. So I started making some tutorials, and that was going to be the end of it. And, it is here today. I now kind of tutorialist, analyst, knucklehead on the internet.
Yeah, with 55,000 subscribers. I think it's unbelievable. People have a tendency to lose sight of that. You know what I mean? I'd be curious to see, and you don't have to share it if it's not relative to Supercross, but just your growth numbers year over year, I think would be pretty cool.
That's part of one of the reasons why I'm going to more of the races is, if I'm being candid, right?
Yeah.
Is, some of my best content doesn't need to be from the races, right? I pick stuff out there, but it's about credibility, because I'm a huge numbers guy.
Yep.
And I look at my like to share ratio to views, and my channel seems to be kind of like a guilty pleasure for a lot, where people will watch, but they won't subscribe to, especially if I compare to some of the other ones. And that's, it is what it is. There's more credibility there for other people. So that's kind of what I'm doing, is I'm trying to create more credibility, and you are at mercy of people's first impressions on stuff. So for me to let them know who I really am is kind of the consensus of the whole stuff.
No, I totally agree. And it's interesting because, like, on my type of content, people are only going to search our content when there's a need, want, or a desire. Arm pump, frustrated with weight loss, energy levels, injuries, whatever it may be, how to get strong specific to a motorcycle. And we'll put a video out. It might get 300-400 views in the first week. But like what we always say in our business is we look at a 10-year amortization. So like I've got videos that have 1 million views on it, but the video's been out there for 10 or 15 years because unfortunately I'm not a up to date. This is what's going on in the triathlon world, running world, here in moto off road, because that's not, like you said, that market. There's plenty of content providers out there for that. What we always say is when you hit the ground, should you apply ice or heat? You can go to our YouTube channel and you can find the answer to that. And it's interesting because I get a lot of pushback from a lot of so-called marketers are like, you've got 25,000 subscribers and you're only getting 500 views. And I'm like, it's 500 views of people who wanted to see that content, whether it's nutrition, biomechanics, sports psychology, injuries, whatever it is. And you got to remember the genesis for our videos are emails that come in with people having a question. So it's an ongoing debate that I have with marketers because they're like, you should have 500,000 subscribers. And I'm like, could, would, and should. Yeah, I mean, I guess at some level, I'm just trying to organically, and I know that words overused, but I'm just trying to organically get my numbers up with people who find us on a short, find us on Instagram, find us on YouTube, essentially addressing a frustration. So it is interesting how you started and where you ended up. Because you got to remember, I used to spend 60 hours a week at either doing open water swims or at the track. And thanks to things like this right here, we can say it once and get it into 1 million people's hands. And that's a beautiful thing. So, but congratulations on your growth is my point.
No.
It's awesome.
Thank you.
Yep.
Now everybody's been wanting me to go to all of them. I'm like, family first. I don't want to go to all of them because the sheer fact that, I leave Thursday night or Friday morning and then I'm not home till like Sunday night, and that's, I'm going to miss.
I was just gonna ask you that question. How many hours sleep did you get from when you left to when you got home?
Usually I try to fly out at like 3 a.m. and then I can make press by like 9 and
Yep.
then don't go to bed till probably like midnight or something because editing some videos and that sort of thing. And then,
Yeah.
usually I try to get in a good long run on Sunday because for some reason I get really stressed out when I'm there. And so it's kind of like a reset.
Yeah.
So, I try to wake up at like 5, 6 and I'm like, all right, usually I'm not at altitude whenever I'm traveling. So I'm like, oh, this will be more fun. I can breathe better. So
Yeah.
I bring my running shoes and I try to go 5 to 10 and then I'll make the morning press conference shows. And then pretty much it's all day until probably go to bed at like 1. And then sometimes I don't even sleep because then I got to return my rental car at like 3 a.m. to fly out because I want to go home. I want to see my family. I don't want to
Exactly.
hang out there. As much as people say that the races are, I mean, dude, it's a wonderful thing, right? Like, when I walk into that stadium, I'm just going, man, Johnny, you couldn't make it here as a rider, but look at this. You're walking in here and you're giving back more than you ever could. So it's a beautiful feeling, and anyway, but yeah, it's a lot of work.
It's exhausting. Yeah.
And I miss my family. So I'm like, no, guys, I'm going to go to 5 or 6 of them, and we'll go from there. But coach, I wanted to talk to you about Deegan, right?
Mm-hmm.
My perception of what happened this weekend was he was a runaway. Like everybody that I've talked to, everyone that's on the fantasy stuff, it was basically who's going to win the 450s. And it was like a crapshoot. It was like, okay, it could be Jett, could be Tomac, it could be Rock,
Sexton,
maybe,
yeah,
Sexton, maybe even Webb, so it was, you were like, I don't know. But then the 250s, everyone's mouth was Deegan. Oh, for sure. And everyone ran away, right? RJ didn't want to race West. I mean, he probably wanted to defend, but anyway, then Levi was over here and now he's not over here. Everyone seemed like they were running away from Deegan. As my whole analogy for it is a lot of guys were, I wouldn't even call it an analogy. That's the wrong word. were running away from him on the Star Yamaha. A lot of those big riders like Jordan Smith and Kitchen and those guys moved on to different teams. And I believe it's because of the Deegan effect. But you let me know, because I guess wrapping it all the way in here, because this is very open-winded and I'm digressing. What he said on the podium was he said he was embarrassed about his ride with a third place. And whoo, man, talk about pressure, right?
But that was not the type of response I think anybody was expecting from him. And it's interesting. Do you remember the interview that Deegan and his dad did with Jace at Gypsy Tales? And remember, they were sitting in the backyard, and Deegan said, "We did our homework. We knew what we needed to do to come in." And he made the comment that they were a little better prepared than he thought he was necessary. Do you remember that comment coming out of Gypsy Tales? So Brian said he knew what the bar was, so they trained for that bar. And then when the racing began, they were ahead of the bar. And even Brian said, I was a little bit surprised. I think it's taken a paradigm shift.
Last year is when
yes, sir.
He had them on. Sorry.
Yeah, it was the 2-part series where one was on Jace's and then the other one aired on Deegan's channel. And I just loved it because I thought Brian and Haiden were extremely candid. I thought Jace had great questions. The one that always stands out to me being a human performance coach is when Brian said, we did pit bikes, we did mountain bikes, we did, everything on 2 wheels. And I loved when he said, we think it worked, but we won't know. Only time will be able to tell. Because everybody's thinking, what's the perfect formula to create a Haiden Deegan? Well, you try a lot of different things and you try to, and Brian went on to say, you just find what works for you and then you hope it's good enough. Now you take that whole conversation and I think Beaumare, obviously the guys, Jordan Smith's a very, very accomplished rider, been around forever. Cole Davies sitting there training with Deegan on a weekly basis. I think it went the other direction. Deegan has done such a great job of establishing a bar that is so high that I think Davey Millsap's working with Beaumare has said, look, guys, the bar is not here. The bar is at the stratosphere. And we've heard the conversations about like Davey Millsap's taken Beaumare's phone away to keep him from becoming distracted, right? It's just another example of setting the bar extremely high. And that's what I think you're seeing is, I don't think Deegan's going slow, but the fact that he couldn't come through the pack like he normally does, compare that to SMX Vegas, where he went through the pack, right? You didn't see him come through. He wasn't able to get around. And, when Cole Davies made a mistake, think about it. Deegan wouldn't have been on the box again if Davies hadn't made that mistake. If you look at lap times, based on lap times.
And a couple things, like Juju, is he 19?
He's young. I think 18, 19, not 18, much more. No, he's 17. He's 7. Oh no, Cole Davies is 17. Excuse me.
He's young.
That's right.
But I think Juju is almost pretty close to the same age as Jett. Here, I'll look at it, or somebody in the screen, in the chat room, let me know as well. And I love it that you guys are saying XRP to the moon. Yeah, congratulations to Donald Trump, man. Inauguration day. This is wonderful year it's going to be. No tax on crypto, and hopefully dirt bikes get cheaper. And who knows? Maybe even Donald Trump can save KTM. We will see. And
I want to see Elon Musk buy PR Mobility Group. That's who I want to buy it.
Yeah, exactly.
Because he says he's not in the automobile industry; he's in the technology industry. And what would he do for moto? So
that is true.
That'd be cool.
Yeah, it is a technology company. Okay, my train of thought here is we live in a world of perception, not reality. And I think that's where we get caught up. Because if we look at Deegan, has he ever won a Supercross championship before? No, he hasn't, right? He got second last year. And with some analysis that came out, when he had the fastest qualifying time at San Diego, that was only the second time in his career, right? So reality is that this guy is still fairly new to Supercross. And he doesn't have a crap ton of experience. But the perception is that he needs to win everything. He's just on another level, and he is going to beat everyone no matter what, right? And sometimes I think you get caught up in that. And I believe he's probably been drinking the same Kool-Aid as everybody else. Because when I asked him at the pre-press conference before the season started, I was going, hey, you broke your wrist, but are you more prepared than were you last year for the season. He was like, oh, hell yeah, I'm way more prepared than I ever have been. I know what to expect, and this is going to be the best version of myself. Incredibly confident. And he even had some sass with a bunch of the other riders that I thought, he was picking on Jett for a little bit, saying that he was going to beat Jett no matter what as well. Like, Jett can't even hold a candle to him when he was on a 250. So he's got that pizzazz. He's got that attitude. But what happened on San Diego was like, wow, this SOB is human, right?
Yeah.
This was some humble pie. So now I'm excited because I get to see all of the work that Brian Deegan has helped shape this individual in. Are we going to see this guy persevere in some challenging times, right? So I think it can be better for the sport. Not to mention, you've got Cole Davies and Juju, who really weren't in his era of being a part of him just waxing everybody and then the whole social media stuff, right? They were kind of on the outskirts of it. So they're not, you know what I mean, Coach?
No, I agree with you 100%. He made a comment when he post-race conference. Remember, he said that he wheelied coming down the front on the start. You remember him making that comment?
And no, I don't. So you're going to tell me.
In the press conference, he was talking about the idea on the start. He wheelied, and that sent a red flag up to me because I just recently interviewed Jeremy Martin for our Next Chapter podcast that'll drop next month. And we were talking about when Jeremy first went to Star Yamaha. Remember the first two? He was hired to win the championship. And if you remember, he didn't make the main in the first 2 rounds when he signed with Star Yamaha. And Jeremy went on, I just asked him because I'd being behind the scenes a little bit, I'd heard that the discrepancy between his practice bike and his race bike was night and day. He said the thing was a rocket ship, like to the point that he couldn't even ride it. And so here's Jeremy, signs with Star Yamaha. I think the first round was Atlanta. He doesn't make the main event. Goes to the next round, doesn't make the main event. And literally what he was saying was the bike was just a rocket ship that he couldn't ride it. Now, I'm not saying that Deegan's discrepancy of bikes is significant, but when Deegan makes a comment that it wheelied like that, tells me excessive amounts of power. Maybe the configuration is a little bit different, or obviously we're all chasing setup on the night of the race. Moisture comes up, temperature changes, a lot changes. But I'm just wondering, and there was a comment that was put in here, and I apologize, I missed who it was that said it, but the idea that the SMX rounds are a little bit longer, so Deegan adds more, and I totally agree with you on that, right? We know Deegan is a diesel engine. Once he gets going, he's very hard to beat. But if you look at how quickly he being Deegan went through the pack last week, we didn't see that same level of gut through the pack. Now, obviously, it's a little bit different going from last place, getting into the top 10 versus, starting in 5th and being able to run through Jordan Smith and through Bo Mayer. I'm not putting those two together. You know how it is, Johnny. The closer you get to the top, the harder everything is, right? And so those extra 1% here and there become more difficult. But I liked what you said. I think the rest of everybody, obviously Bo Mayer and Jordan, they recognize he's human. My question for you would be if Shimoda hadn't got his hand, 2 fingers broken, do you think that he would have been able to hold and get up into that top 5 with those guys at the pace they were going? If you kept all variables constant between last week and this week, you think Joe would have been up there?
100%. Joe, what he's been missing is he's been missing setup with that Honda, right?
Yeah.
He struggled because he was a guy that was coming through basically winning the outdoors, right? And then by surprise, all of a sudden he's struggling hardcore in Supercross. You're like, okay, what changed? And then he was very open about, the testing of that Honda, and now they figured it out. And so for what has happened with his hand, dude, for sure, Joe, I believe Joe would have gotten potentially a better start than Deegan, and it would have been more of a story of who's going to beat Joe rather than Deegan for San Diego. And I don't understand how Joe is going to, what would it be, Coach? Would it be a cortisone shot? Because we all know fingers hurt like an SOB, right? And there's not much you can do to them. I mean, pretty much there's probably a good portion of the guys in the chat room that have ridden with broken fingers or something, because that's just what happens. You get your finger smashed and, and just because they're broken, it's like, okay, he probably has a couple small fractures. Who knows? Maybe it's even a boxer's tear where the ligaments kind of peel off like paint off of a wall if you have like a duct tape or something. But
Yeah.
usually that stuff takes minimum 3 weeks to start feeling better. And, a doctor would tell you 6 to 8 weeks if you don't need
Hmm.
any pins or anything. But coach, what are they going to do? What is the Asterisk Medical crew going to do? Is it a cortisone shot that's going to help them next weekend or what?
Yeah, I mean, it's just going to be about masking the pain. I mean, think about it. If you're not a professional motorcycle racer, having a couple broken fingers is inconvenient. But when you're trying to hold on to a bike at speed through the whoops and use it for a clutch, that creates a lot of problems. You know what I mean? So cortisone is a huge pain killer, and unfortunately, and the scary part about it is when you can't feel it, your risk of making the injury worse goes up almost exponentially. So it's not a good scenario, but it's just like the young amateurs that go to Loretta's. If all of a sudden you come down with a virus, or let's say you get banged up in practice on Monday, of course you're going to jack yourself up with ibuprofen. You've just spent all year trying to get to Loretta's. You're going to do whatever it takes to get through that race. It's not like, oh, poor me, I hit the ground, I'm going to pack up and go home. You've got 5 days of racing and you do what you got to do. Now, am I advocating that it's healthy? No, but that's the real world we live in. It's like when we go to Ironman Hawaii. I had a lady, not for Ironman. She was actually training for the Boston Marathon. And on her very last, it was an easy run. It was a 5-mile easy run. She was literally crossing the street to go to the street that she lived on. She was looking for traffic, caught her toe on a manhole cover and ate shit. Just didn't even get her hands out. Totally blew her whole shoulder up. I mean, just road rash, bruised the nth degree. Literally, it was her last run. She was going to take a shower and go to the airport that night and fly to Boston. You're going to tell me she didn't live on ibuprofen to get through that marathon? Of course she did. I'm not saying that it was healthy and it probably tore her stomach up, but yeah, pinkies are not fun. I just can't imagine having 2 broken ones and then trying to hold on to bars, go through the whoops, grab a clutch, and do all that they're doing. And unfortunately, we don't have a lot of time between Supercross and motocross. Good news is he's got a little bit of a break when we get, when we go East Coast here shortly. So that'll be his only saving grace, really.
Yeah, no, and this is definitely times of challenge and controversy for Joe, which is
Yeah.
unfortunate. But it's a bummer that Deegan couldn't capitalize on it because
Mm-hmm.
truthfully, the way Deegan rode, if Joe was healthy, he probably wouldn't have been on the podium, right? And again, we have to remember lap times, right? So
Mm-hmm.
all those guys were in the 53 seconds. Who gives a fuck that Deegan was the fastest qualifier, by tenths of a second, right? Like we can go back and see Cooper Webb and Ken Roxon. They're not the best qualifying time guys, but when it matters, they have this innate ability to show up when the gate drops for the main event. And I will say that the track did not help them, right? This track had so many 90s, very hard to pass. I did like what they did after the first big triple, as opposed to on my track video, I said everyone's going to run to the inside. Well, they made it an off camber, right? So the track crew went out there and said, how do we make these guys to try to get them to go to the outside? So everyone just doesn't bottleneck on the inside. So they made a little off camber. I thought that was a good innovation, and I would like to see more off cambers on flat corners. I think that is great because nobody wants to go to the outside of a corner that doesn't have a berm, right? Because you might as well just go to the inside, because it doesn't matter if you don't triple out or whatever, you make up more time
Mm-hmm.
because just the amount of surface area that you travel. But if it's an off camber now, it's a little bit more even. And with the sand section, I liked what they did with the couple moguls on the inside. But it still didn't create enough of a dynamic for riders to really want to pick different lines. And that's the issue here is it's like, okay, how do we create a track that is technical enough? Honestly, I feel like the technicality of the tracks are not as, it's not as difficult, because the one
Mm-hmm.
section that I hated was after the whoop section, right? The whoops were boring as hell to watch because guys were just, they got beat up. So guys couldn't skim them, and so they got a big giant V cut in down the middle of them. And I'm just going to pause real quick. We have close to 400 people watching the stream. Hit that like button, guys. That's how the algorithm pushes this out to other people, I know
Please.
Coach would appreciate it. I would appreciate it. But 9
Absolutely.
whoops, guys would wheelie in and then triple quad out, and they were done. But then that next section, it should have been another whoop section, in my opinion, because just the step on, step off, that was the only line imaginable. Yeah, you could do a step over, but you're in the air longer, and all the professionals know that, and all the data acquisition that they have, they know that it's a slower line. So there just wasn't any separation between these guys. So it was really the start. And for like what you said, Coach, him wheeling on the start. Well, what happens when you wheelie, right? You have two options. You
Yep.
can either continue to drop your elbow and just tap the clutch briefly. That's the best option. Second option is you roll off. But both options require loss of power. And I don't like the metal gates. I just don't. And honestly, I don't like the starts because they're just, I think the starts are just too dangerous with those gates. Call me a Hillary Clinton, whatever, or it's my point. In the outside, nobody fucking likes the outside of the gates. Everyone just funnels to the inside. And when you have a metal gate, well, now you're taking away half of the equation, because normally riders, they go, hey, do I want a good starting rut, or do I want a good exit rut that I can line up? And it's hard to get both. But in today's day and age, it doesn't matter what kind of starting rut you have, because there is no one.
Yeah.
And then I really want to see the outside shifted 2 to 3 feet closer to the corner, regardless if it's on the left or right-hand side, so that people want to go to the outside.
I don't think you're going to find many people that disagree with you on the grates. You know, it's gone from being a novelty to the idea that it's starting to increase the level of danger going in the first turn. And again, we're not saying that this isn't, you know, a game where people, you know, I love the Instagram videos floating around where you have Daniel Sanders, who has a big get off in Dakar, runs back to his bike and takes off, and then they show a soccer player who gets tapped in the shin and he looks like a wiggling dead worm. You know, that's not what we're insinuating, though. And Johnny, you're exactly right. I think the consensus of 99% of the people that love Supercross realize the greats are just making it dangerous. It's just, okay, we can only wait until they get through the first turn, hope that half the field isn't taken out, and then we get to watch some racing. And for all, like you say, the data acquisition, all of the statistics that they gather, I'm really surprised that the grades are still there, to be honest with you, because it's not making for better racing. It's making for worse racing. And it's not because the stars went down in the first turn. It's just the idea that it's dangerous for everybody. Like you said last time, when everybody's coming in literally handlebar to handlebar, and there's enough room for 3 bikes to go through, and you've got 21 coming in, the math doesn't work to your advantage. So I don't think that you're sounding like a Hillary Clinton at all. I think just the numbers illustrate, hey, we tried it. It didn't work. It increased the number of wrecks. It took away from the excitement of racing. Please get rid of them. Let's go back. I mean, look at them. I don't know. Maybe you can put a dollar figure to it, Johnny. How much money has Honda, Cowie, all these big manufacturers spent on just the ECU? They have it set that before the gate drops, ECU is doing one thing. When the clutch lets go, the ECU changes again. By the time the wheel gets to the grate and goes over that cover of the gate, it's already changed twice. And when it hits the dirt, it changes a third time. And what is that? 1/1000th of a second, 2/1000th of a second.
Faster than you could do ever manage it, because it's all electronic. Coach,
All electronic.
there was times when, you know, I'm under the impression that James Stewart, why he never came back, was he wasn't going to get a factory ECU. And so he was like, fuck you guys. I'm not going to race if you guys aren't going to give me an unlocked factory, as in unobtainium ECU, because that's really where these motorcycles, what makes them an elite status over what we get on stock is just that the electronics on them. And now it's even more so, right? It's taken out some of the
your point's well
right?
taken. Look at, as much as I didn't want to see Prado in the heat race, I said to Michaela, I go, this will be the best illustration to show you how much better a factory ECU is. Now, yes, Prado is a good starter. I'm not insinuating that. But you go watch that heat race. It says it all. Because by the time the gate drops, Prado is like 3 bike lengths in front of everybody almost instantaneously. Put aside the factory parts and all that. 450s are just bad to the bone, even in the stock format, right? But when you look at how quickly that bike accelerated out of there, that to me surmises the difference between a factory bike and the amount of money that goes into it. And like you always say, he who has the most money wins. We get that. We understand that. But if you take the greats out of it, at least there'd be some level of, and I don't want to call it fairness, because I may the best man win. But as you said earlier, I wish it would go back to actual technique instead of just all the technologies. You pretty much autopilot until you have to grab your second shift. And it just, the LCQ just illustrated that in a very big way.
And truthfully, Coach, it's like a double-edged sword at the moment, because this sport in general is resistant to change, right? But yet, ironically, I'm over here with as like an opposite proponent saying, I don't like the change that it's gone, right? And therefore, new technology creates innovation, which is great. Like, I want to see the sport go into a works type scenario where Tomac has, why is it that he has a special compound tire, right, that you cannot buy? But then we have this stupid production rule that he has to run a 2025 frame, and we have to have, like, the reason why Ducati's not going to be able to race motocross early or anything is because they don't have 100, or what the rule, I think, is 250 released for sale. Yep. But yet you can still have a custom tire that nobody could ever get. Dunlop only makes 100 of these fuckers just for Tomac, right? Yep. Like, it's backwards. Just give them the work shit, and it's going to create a lot more innovation, and people are going to start thinking, and it's going to honestly grow the sport better. This whole homologation rule is keeping the sport small, in my opinion. And therefore, looping this back to the start gate, yeah, we're innovating, right? I just potentially think safety has something that needs to be said in there, especially when you have guys that don't have all the same level of equipment on there. Not knocking on the privateers. I'm not knocking on the privateers.
No, not at all. That's not what you're saying.
But, like, if statistically, if we were to put them in a realm of percentages, right? Let's just say we're creating the best rider. A privateer, he's got 60% speed of Tomac, right? But then you combine that with a motorcycle that's also 60% of his factory Yamaha. It's just going to create an issue where this guy's in the way on the track. So I want to see the sport grow to the point where we have a works class, and then let's have a privateer class, almost like an F3 type deal for these guys to make money. And let's take away all the fucking purse money from the pros, because it's not even that much, right? Tomac won $16,000 from Feld. Big whoopity doo, right? But if you were to put that stuff into the third class, that's below the 250 class, that money would be, lack of a better word, life-changing.
Absolutely. Right? Well, think about, take drag racing, take the NHRA, right? You go there and they've got cars that lead up to Top Fuel dragsters. So we go there for the show of recognizing that some of the spectators there might like some of the other styles of racing, maybe, but you get the gist of what I'm saying. When you go there between motorcycles and then you have these different classes of cars, everybody ultimately comes to see the Top Fuel dragsters. And there's I don't know, there's got to be somebody that's in the chat room that's familiar with it. How many total Top Fuel dragster cars come up to an NHRA race? I'm going to guess maybe 6 to 8. It's not like you see 100 Top Fuel dragsters that show up. But for the entertainment purpose and for the people that are there, what are we there to see? You watch each class, one over the other, go through its elimination process that leads to the ultimate very best, which is in the same thing with Formula One. Now, Formula One, obviously, they have standalone races. You have your F3 race, you have your F2 and F1, but we don't have that same format. You can't just have on Friday night, it's going to be the, as you call it, group 3. On Saturday night, it's not going to be the group 2. And then on Sunday night, it's going to be the works division. Of course not. We have to combine it like NHRA does. And the idea is there should be a works class that is, like you say, those are the unattainables. Those are the old David Bailey's RC 500s. You know what I mean? The stuff that were literally pieces of art, so much technology that was put into it. But I just don't see why this is such a hard concept. And like you say, if you take that money, put that down at the lower level where it would be appreciated, then it's a win-win. So yes, good job.
It's just a little OBS stuff. That stuff was a nightmare to try to set up, by the way. Like technical stuff is just been it. But Coach, that's like a good little segue here. We know Deegan is more than likely going to bounce back because I believe the consensus is in, I would say, intuition that he's got a good team behind him, right? So they're going to be like, dude, get out of your own way and move forward.
See, I have to disagree with you. They got to get Cole Davies out of his way. Cole Davies is totally blown my mind. 2 races and he's gotten the whole shot. I mean, that's a kid that is not, obviously he's not scared of the pressure. He stepped up 2 for 2. He made his own bobble. Yeah. But I don't know, because this is where, when you look at this conversation of race and train with your competition all week makes you a better racer on the weekend, I think this has always been my personal opinion, and I've voiced it here on the show before, so it's public record. Everybody knows where I stand with it. You didn't see James, you didn't see Chad, you didn't see Ricky training with your biggest competitors. You never give away your secrets, you never show weakness. You could have a completely blown up knee, but if your competitors didn't see you jamming on Wednesday, they didn't know when you came walking in on Saturday, right? So I think Cole Davies is a perfect example that he's riding with Deegan during the week going, I'm faster than him. It was actually quoted in, again, I apologize, I missed it. I told myself to remember it. Introspectives. Cole Davies was the fastest at the Star Track, has been. And then he's showing it on Saturday night. So you don't think that's getting into Deegan's head? Of course it is. Now, Deegan's a scrapper. He's not intimidated by it by any stretch of the imagination. But I think there's been a huge momentum shift as we've seen 2 main events. Cole Davies gets the whole shot. He's not afraid of anybody. Made his own bobble. Beaumare, he looks like a new man-child. Big square forehead. He definitely is not feeling any pain, right? He's shown that he's stepped up his game in a very big way. So you put, I don't know, you put Jordan Smith, incredible amount of years. Just a little side note, Johnny, when I was working with Dunge, CBS did the special. It was me and Dunge against Roxon and Alden Baker. And you know how they have like the primary and then they have the secondary story in the show? Mm-hmm. Jordan Smith was the secondary of that show, talking about coming through the amateur ranks through all of his injuries. That's over 15 years ago.
Wow.
Just to put it in perspective, how much experience Jordan Smith has. And I think you've already mentioned it. I don't think I'm exposing anything, but Jordan's got a long-term deal at Triumph. So he's going to be going to the 450 when that thing comes down, whether he's the B rider or not. He's got a long contract. Nobody else there at Triumph has that on the 250 program. So you put that together, look at that top 5. You've got Beaumare, you've got Cole Davies, you've got Deegan, you've got Shimoda, you've got Jordan Smith. Cole Davies has shown he's gone through all the years of experience with Jordan. He's not intimidated by him. He's training with Deegan all week long, isn't intimidated by him. Hyper competitive. I don't know. I just think Cole Davies is going to be the one that's going to be giving everybody fits. Beaumare is going to be there for sure, and so will Deegan. But Cole Davies has that, reminds me of Ben Townley, not afraid of anybody. If you've been around New Zealanders, they're pretty gritty people. Right? New Zealanders and Australians, they're not intimidated by anybody.
What I've noticed about Cole Davies is, honestly, when I was there at A1, I was going, who in the hell is this number 100? Right? And then honestly, then I was like, who the fuck is this 93? Both Mosman and Davies impressed me more than Deegan. But then,
yeah, I remember you saying that.
Later proved me wrong because he was able to bust out some stuff that I didn't see anyone else doing. So that star team is extraordinary, right? And to piggyback off of what you were saying, seeing him at the press conference, right? You have the 17-year-old who's sitting next to these full grown men, right? Jordan Smith, He's basically in his 30s. I saw him
Couple
at the
children.
airport. He's got a beautiful little baby, and he's
Yep.
talking about having more. And so, yeah, it was cool to see him interact as a family man. But anyway, I'm digressing. He didn't seem intimidated by the whole thing, and it was just a few months ago that he was on the podium at the SMX stuff, and it was a totally different Cole Davies. So
You're talking about his futures, right?
yeah, when he was in
Yeah.
a future deal.
Yeah.
And this is interesting because the 250 class is full of a lot of grown men at the moment, right?
Well, and this is where I love what what Daniel Blair's done with his SXU, because I think part of that is the grooming. You've got to know how to put things in perspective. You've got to play the long game. This is something that Daniel Blair is very big on. And Cole Davies and Bo Mayer are both a byproduct of Daniel Blair, his selection process as a KTM amateur. And, unfortunately, he got poached. But the point is, when you look at the idea that I don't think either of them are surprised that they are where they are because of the way their mindset has been presented. Davey Millsaps is doing a great job with Bo Mayer. Daniel Blair has been very vocal about those two fit like a glove in a hand, right? They can read each other. They feed off of each other. Davey's pretty hard on them in regards to knows what it takes. But then Bo Mayer is willing to do the work. Cole Davies is exactly the same way. Daniel Blair's instilled a lot of things in his head, like play the long game, play the long game. So think about it. What a better place to get groomed than to be at the Star compound, because Moseman is not a spring chicken anymore, right? So he has all that experience. So think about those conversations with Moseman. Then you have Deegan in there. You're kind of seeing a different approach to everything and anything. Then you've got Christian Craig over there, brings a tremendous amount of knowledge. For Cole Davies, I think he's currently reaping the most out of anybody at the Star program, because Deegan's already established. Nobody knows Cole Davies. Nobody's afraid of him. I think they're starting to get afraid of him now, and
Agreed.
should be.
Agreed. And Coach, we talked about it. Success happens when preparation meets opportunity,
Absolutely.
right? And what is the little kid done? Preparation, opportunity is a Star. And if you and kind of back to my quote about mentors, having Deegan teach you, even if it's in an adverse way where he's not openly being like, hey, Cole, why don't you take that inside as opposed to this? But you just being there and watching him, he's teaching you. And poor Moseman, he's got to get out of his own way too. I think he's got to run away from his past. He's like the shadow where he's been hurt so many times, and we know he's fast. I know his brother's super fast, but there's just been like a dark cloud over him where anything and everything that can go wrong kind of goes wrong. And we only see him race a couple races out of the year, which is staggering, right?
Yeah.
So that Star team is something to
they're doing it right. I mean, there's no doubt.
All the other teams are looking at Star to try to because originality is undetected plagiarism. If I was Triumph for anything, and if I was Jordan Smith, that's exactly what I'd be telling these guys. I'd be like, hey, I know what Star does. Let's do this. And what is Jordan doing? He's 3-2 now, right? And it took them all last year to try to get a podium. And now Jordan Smith has done it in 2 races. I don't think – go for it, Coach.
No, I was just going to say, I totally agree with you. Jordan Smith has gotten there because of Deegan's mistake last week and with Cole Davies' mistake this week. But you got to be in it to win it. I don't care what anybody says. You take what you can get when you can get it. And I do want to give a shout out to Jacob. He's right. Star did not poach Davies. I said that probably incorrectly. I just know that when you look at how much work Daniel Blair put into both of those guys, getting them up to where they were at, and it was frustrating because KTM didn't step up and, give them a contract. Jacob's exactly right. Star had the money. I teased Daniel Blair because I get a chance to work with him. And, it was interesting. I said, you are Bobby Reagan's best friend. He goes, what do you mean? I go, because all he does is let you do all the work, and then he just waits till they become available, and then they get them. And so he laughed, but didn't really laugh too much about it because it's true. But it's when you look at the idea. Here's the question that I think would be interesting, or if you could have a conversation around a table. What is it that Jordan Smith is getting at Triumph that he wasn't getting at Star? because we do see a fresh breath air coming out of Jordan Smith. We know he's good.
Playtime.
Yeah.
That's the only thing I can think of is when you have so many good guys at star, and then you have somebody, no pun intended, that has star power like Deegan.
Yeah.
You just naturally gravitate towards your moneymaker, right, as a team, and that's Deegan. So this was the best that he could have done. Same thing with Sexton, getting away from Honda, because he knew who was coming in was the Hunter boys. And honestly, Coach, we've talked about this, and this is why Carmichael gets so much flack for stuff. Is he gets flack for being an a-hole or whatever, and being so aggressive. Well, to be the best in the world, you have to believe it, and you got to kind of be an a-hole at times, right? I mean, I don't know a better way of saying it. You look at Lance Armstrong. He owns the record for Tour de France wins, not for being a nice guy. He was just willing to do what others weren't, and it was at all costs, above everything. And in today's day in racing, to beat these guys that are putting in that amount of effort, you've got to just become your craft, right? Like, it's honestly sad to think about it, that there's so much more life to live besides here. I'm trying to get into philosophy, so maybe I'll just stop while I'm ahead. But you know what I'm saying, Coach.
Yeah, I agree, but I politely disagree. Not because I disagree with you, but I think I disagree with the bigger story. Look at Levi Kitchen. He bounces from star, he sprouts. You have Jordan Smith, bounces from star. I don't think he really sprouted. I think he's just riding to his ability, like you say, maybe because the fun factor's there or whatever it may be. Where I politely disagree with you is what makes Lance Armstrong an asshole? Because he wouldn't put up with other people's bullshit? Okay. Or is it because of the way that you treated people? Ricky Carmichael has gotten a bad rap because, yes, he's known for being a pit bull of a worker, had some methodologies that people still question to this day, but it's still how you treat people. And you look at how Ricky treated Daniel, that's well documented. We don't need to go down that bunny trail. I think when somebody gives somebody, like having been around Lance Armstrong and seeing how he works, most people didn't like Lance Armstrong, not because he wanted to win and what he would do to win, but with the way he treated people off the bike. That was why he had all the lawsuits, right? And we know now the story is what it is. If you look back at the idea that Lance was trying to keep a secret under wraps, so he became brutal with his approach to do so. If, like when he sued the reporter, right? If you even so much as sniffed around something, Lance would just throw a lawsuit at you to become a distraction. So when somebody says, like, Ricky's got a bad reputation, he has to own that, because off the bike, and you see this even right now, can you imagine how difficult it would be? Take your top 5 guys. You choose your own 5 in your own head if you're listening to this or watching us, right? Imagine trying to make that person happy every single day. We saw it with Webb. Couldn't get comfortable at KTM, bounces to Star. You have Sexton, couldn't get comfortable at Honda, bounces to KTM. I want you to put yourself in that position. They complain about everything. You look at when Roxon was trying to choose the pros, whoever the top, we call them the prima donnas, right? Whoever you think the top 455 guys are, imagine trying to make them happy every day of the week. It's impossible. So what happens is you're trying to make somebody's job easier. They're on top of the heap, so they treat you like an absolute doormat. How long do you want to keep doing that? So the perception is you're an asshole because, yes, you might be at the top and you may not like something, but the way that you tell me you don't like something makes you an asshole. There's some really good guys that were out there that were good on giving feedback on a bike. Jeff Stanton doesn't have one person that says he was an asshole when he was trying to set a bike up, right?
Like Trey Kennard,
Trey Kennard. Yeah, and same thing with Brock Tickle. So the idea here is I want the listeners to stop and think about, like when Ken Roxon wasn't happy with when he was trying to set up a Suzuki. We've heard stories that he's gone KYB back to Showa, Showa back to KYB, KYB back to Showa, wherever he's finally ended up. I know for a fact that there's people that literally have like driven through the night to get suspension to a pro, and the pro just doesn't even acknowledge it, doesn't even appreciate how much work has been put in because I'm good. And it's, yeah, you know what I mean? And I think that's what's missing right now. dealing with the top
It's real
five
life
at the
experience, coach. Like, that's what I
yeah.
love so much about the privateers for the most part. Yeah, some of them just, are perceived as maybe not as hardworking. And sorry, I totally fucking interrupted you.
No, you're good. It's your show.
Well, you are my co-host here. Astronomically rude of myself.
Well, look at the Lawrences, right? Things aren't going well, and you don't. And not to throw Sexton under the bus, but how many practice mechanics has he gone through? Because they're difficult to work with. Why did Jay Dungy leave Factory Honda? Because he was difficult to work with. Ironically, ends up working with them again now that they're at KTM. You know, and I when people say someone's an asshole, and then the person that's being called an asshole likes to spin it and says, well, it's just what it takes to be number one. You don't have to be disrespectful who are trying to make your job better. I look at the role that Carlos played for Dungy. The chemistry between those two guys were great. For the time that I had to work with Dungy, and if you guys remember, Dungy had just left Suzuki. He's riding at the goat farm, shaking down the KTM. Never once did I hear Dungy bark at Carlos. Never once. And it wasn't going well. I mean,
You
you're
are
going from
right.
Suzuki to a KTM. Right. So that's the only thing I want people to understand is it's not that the people that work with them are envious that they're successful. It's just you get to a certain point. I call it too cool for school. I'll put myself in the catbird seat. I'll take an athlete, and I've got 6 of them that I could give you the names for. All of you would know who they are. I take them from 65, champion at Loretta's, 85, champion at Loretta's. Get them into the B class, top 3, top 5 champions at B class. 2-year deal with an OEM. Well, by the time we get to the 2-year deal with an OEM, they now think they've arrived because they're making 3, 4, 500,000. What we did to get them there, they liked, but now because they've got money, they don't want to hear your voice anymore because they've talked to you for 6 years. So the program worked, but we're going to go a different direction. Why? Because we are too cool for school. So when someone has a reputation of being an asshole, you need to own it, because no one's calling you an asshole because they're jealous of your success. It's the way that you treated people when you got to the top, shitting on all the people that got you where you're at. The best example I have is Dazzy. If Hunter or Jett, because I've been in their presence, if Hunter or Jett were to say anything disrespectful to Lars or anybody working their ass off to make those bikes work, Dazzy would grab them by the throat, figuratively speaking. Maybe not. Dazzy does not put up with that shit. You appreciate who's helping you make money and make a living at racing dirt bikes. Don't ever forget about it. Don't ever look back. Be respectful. And I love the Australian mindset because they don't take shit. Dazzy will pull those 2 boys, even though they're grown men. Dazzy is still the man in that family. And when I say man, respectful man. You don't disrespect people who are working their ass off to make you successful.
Right. Like, from hanging out at the races, that is the biggest thing that I see is it's a breeding ground that the athletes are just the prima donnas. Right?
That's the word. That's the word.
Everybody is wanting to spit shine their shoes. Mm-hmm. Right. And truthfully, I see it everywhere I go. And I look at guys and I'm just people there, like, I talked to multiple flaggers and I just shook their hand and was like, guys, you are the ones that are keeping these riders safe. Yeah. Yes, I've been criticizing you before, right? But I'm not saying I could do a better job than you. I'd be the one that's fucking watching the racing and I'd get landed on, right? I just couldn't do it. I'm not even going to try. Yeah. And so, they demand more respect. And I feel like most people that are going into business in this sport should demand more respect, especially from the riders. But the hierarchy of it is that, you see it with mechanics not getting paid. You see it with no benefits on everything. And the excuse is that there's no money here. And it's like, no, the excuse is because we've enabled it. It's all enabling. And these kids have been taught since a young age to enable that. Even me, right? Even my own silly perception. When I was a little fast kid on a 65 and whatnot, I got stuff for free. And it then started to create this I'm better than you kind of effect in my head. Right. And that is a problem. But when that continues throughout your entire career and now you're a man with no there's a word here that I'm looking for. With no experience of real life, it just trickles down to everybody. And so, yeah, I will retract what I said about the analogy between Carmichael and Lance Armstrong. But moving forward, because I said that we were going to keep the show somewhat short.
Just real quick, Johnny, on my Meet the Guest next chapter with Jeremy Martin, he specifically addresses this where he talks about the people that are making money on you, when you're on the way up. And then when he broke his back, his phone's not ringing. He's laying in the hospital by himself. I want you guys to listen to that because it'll illustrate exactly what we're talking about. Those hanger honors, the ones that are making the money, the ones that now, they want to be with the popular guy. And if you get a chance, go listen to that. It's going to drop at the middle of next month. But just coming from Jeremy Martin, as we all saw, right? We all remember that GoPro video of him running into Jay Coop in the air. There went the 450 Honda deal. There just went 8 months of rehab. It's a pretty powerful story. But to your point, appreciate the people that are going around that are trying to help you out. And that's where I do feel a father figure with the right mindset should be the one that's bringing those life experiences and giving your son the Cliff Note version, like you say, because that's what we don't have is experience. That's what makes it hard. And it's a young man's sport for sure.
Yeah. Here's the philosophy. Having the ability to change your perspective when new information is presented to you is a dying art, right?
Yes.
Moving forward, let's go 6 gear, full pinned real fast here. Tomac shouldn't retire because this was the one time that I've actually seen him not run away from Jett, but hold Jett off. Usually when he gets caught, he can hold on to it for a little while, not 10, 15 minutes of a main event. And Jett finds a way around him and he's gone. And then you see Tomac go back to the drawing board like, dude, I'm riding better than I ever have. Where do I come up with an extra couple tenths a second? Could you imagine that? Trying to all right, all I need is a couple tenths a second every lap. That's so minuscule. You're like, where the fuck do I just fart around a corner? Like what can I do more?
Yep. No, and the thing that I said to Michaela when we were watching it on Saturday night is let's go back to SMX Vegas, right? Tomac got the whole shot. Jett caught him, went around him. And I'm not going to say dropped him like a bad idea, but he left him nonetheless. And now we fast forward 3 months later and it's a completely different playground. I liked what you said earlier about, Jordan and it's the fun factor. No disrespect to Tomac. He reminds me a lot of the old Larocco. I'm just here to do my job. I'm not going to give glamorous interviews. I'm not going to be smiling. I'm not going to be Travis Pastrana. I'm just going to answer your questions. And I'd prefer not to have to do it, but I will because it comes with the job. Now Tomac is smiling. He's engaging. He's doing more than answering the question. He's like carrying on different things. I mean, like we teased about last week, he said, I was fast for the first quarter of a lap. Like
actually gone on an interview with Gypsy. Like that.
Yeah. I mean, that's unheard of. And I think we were just talking about the idea of the benefit of age and experience. If you, and Johnny, I know this, I don't mean to rip a scab off, but think about the relief when you and Paige made that decision. All right, we're done with racing. In some awkward way, it was like, okay, I can kind of pump the brakes a little.
Chosen for me.
Exactly. Yeah. But when that decision is made, think about the pressure that comes off of you. So Tomac comes out, makes a public announcement that it's his last year. All the pressure's off. Because if he doesn't win, it's your last year. Good job. I know he's saying he doesn't want a season of farewells, but he's out there having fun, racing extremely well. What I wanted to give a shout out to is look at how comfortable he looked on that Yamaha. I mean, he's been good the last couple of years, but it looks like the bike just fits him. Just everything is going great. Do you think that we're going to see that same level of balance and comfort on the bike when we go to East Coast and the dirt changes up? Because it seems like right now they are so on point with that bike out west.
Dude, the 3-time motocross champion. Oh, fucking hell yeah. Like that's where I think we're really going to see the beast mode is when the tracks start getting really chewed up and really difficult, where it is a motocross in between the sections. on a supercross, which is just mind blowing as far as scariness goes. But
Yes. That's what I was thinking.
Another animal.
Well, he's riding the Yamaha. Here's Tomac, the master of outdoors, riding on West Coast hard packed and beating Jett, and looks like he's on another planet, another level. How much worse is it going to get when we go east? So it's just like I couldn't be more excited about the 450 class. It is interesting how, when you look at that top 10, the shifting around the top 10. I mean, I'm disappointed that Hunter's sick again. I don't know if that's digestive issues or if he's just got the flu bug or whatever. Because obviously Hunter looked good on the 450
Coach,
last year.
this is interesting here. I did get wind that Tomac has stopped, give it up to Dunlop, because Dunlop actually they wanted to know if Tomac was retiring because they wanted to keep the 3S alive for Tomac because he loved that. And then we had the MX32, then 33, and now we have like the MX34. But now he's running supposedly the stock production tire of MX34, which is interesting. Sorry, I just wanted to.
No, that's good. No, I love the engagement with the live chat room here. And again, we appreciate all you guys. There's almost 500. Hit that like button. I don't know what the like button number is up to, Johnny, but I'd love to see us get to 50% of that.
I already have 4 screens open here. I can't do anymore. So
thanks, guys. We appreciate it.
Where there's only so much I can take care of
without
sitting here, and they're like,
and there's a lot of comments here about Tomac looking healthy and leaner than last year. Totally agree. But I think right there you go. Introspective is killing it today. Yeah, it's one of those situations where I think he's happy, and I hate that word happy. It's like, I'm not having fun on my dirt bike. I'm like, anybody that gets paid to ride your dirt bike, there's a higher level of fun. I guarantee you're having more fun testing than the average person that's having to go to work and may not enjoy.
To a point. Because how much do you want to, like, talking with Jason Anderson a little bit, it's like, all right, what it takes to win is you've got to put basically your life on the line at the practice track too. There's only that's, Coach, where we've talked about these guys riding so much and racing so much, where they really should spend more time trail riding, right? Than just flat out, I got to do 110%, boom, 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 because you are the number one coach for burnout. And what the sport, as far as on the outside looking in, it wants you to burn the fuck out. It wants you to race 6 motos during Wednesday and Thursday and Friday before I guess it would be Wednesday and Thursday when you get home. And then Friday you go to press day. And then Saturday you're back to racing. Just this constant, just no breaks. Trail riding, in my opinion, can bring back the love of the sport and allow you to relax and just bring it back to what you were saying. Tomac, pressure is off, right? I'm going to enjoy it. I might as well fucking enjoy it. Maturity of him having 3 kids, being a family man, being in his 30s, and knowing that this is not going to last forever. So let me cherish the moment, right?
Well, if you reverse engineer what Tomac has done so well over the years, and I really commend his dad, John, and his mom, Kathy, they understand periodization. When the season was over, Eli and his dad, they'd grab their bows and they'd go elk hunting, right? When I was working with AC, Alan, his dad, and Christy, the mom, when AC would get done at Loretta's every year, they would literally leave Loretta's. They would drive back to Florida. They'd park their van and they would go get on a cruise for 10 days. And I think that's one of the things that's missing with a lot of the families is there's no downtime. The amateur series is as long as the moto outdoor is, the series, it just gets longer and longer. But when you look at Tomac and his parents have preserved his career. And I think now when you're in the highlight of your career, Tomac still has that fire in the belly. But Johnny, I couldn't agree with you more, because when you think back to like McGrath in his heyday, when they weren't testing, where did you find Jeremy? He's out in the dunes.
I saw.
Yeah, just out in the dunes, right? Yeah, but my point is they weren't like just grinding at the track 24/7, 365. They put they put the old legitimate paddle tire on, and they're out in the dunes. You kind of like where you see Justin Hill and Josh Hill, just hitting those big old jumps, the Axel Hodges stuff. That's what you used to see Emig and McGrath and those guys go do to get away. They would go to Lake Havasu. I know the whole Emig and Havasu. It's not what I'm bringing up. It's the idea that they brought fun into, yeah, you work hard, you play hard, work hard, make good money. And I just don't, it's almost become like a factory farm where it's just, and again, I know there's going to be people that argue that say you got to grind it to get the results. Well, look at Tomac's career. He's still racing, and there's people that have retired long before Tomac did. We talked about Jordan Smith. I mean, Jordan Smith's still out there. You know, what maybe starting a family has put some, life back into his career. I don't know. But yeah, I think there's a lot that could be said about annual periodization of trying to hit 2 or 3 peak races. Like I was hit up quite a bit this weekend. What kind of fitness level are these guys bringing in to the new year? Are they already at 90, 95%? I think Tomac's at probably 80%. I really do. You look at the other guys, we've already had Webb say he's been sick. I think he was sick again this weekend. Hunter's already sick, right? We're at round number 2 and we've already got sicknesses that are floating around. You know what I mean, Johnny? It's just crazy to me because it's like if these guys have, going from January to October, it's not about even building fitness because you can't build fitness over 10 weeks racing at the highest level. It's come in at one level and then try to maintain it. And I think Tomac is actually going to get faster, as you alluded to earlier. The idea is moving into outdoors. I think you're going to see Tomac get even faster. I think he's going to go faster when we go east, and I think he's going to be even faster when we go outdoors.
I think he's actually going to recover racing.
I think he's going to. There's no way you can recover over 10 months of racing almost every weekend. You just can't recover from it. My point is he's going to. I think he's only coming in at 80% of what he's capable of, knowing that he can maintain it through Supercross, then kick it up another notch and maintain that for outdoors, where the other guys did the opposite. I think they've come in firing on double barrels, and I don't think that they're going to be able to sustain it. So the ones you have to look for, the ones that are in that 3 to 5 range, those are the ones that are going to be much better off. So,
Coach,
yep,
I love you, man. I know we were saying we were only going to do 45 minutes, but
it's always good.
Angel. Lennox, I'm coming to get you. Do you want pancakes this morning? Pancakes or waffles? All right, I got to go get this little girl.
I love it.
She's starting to be a little hellion down there. She's like, where the fuck is?
We're gonna start seeing her on. We're gonna start seeing her on Instagram. Bullshit.
Yeah.
Bullshit.
Yeah.
That's
the
bullshit.
First question she's gonna be like, Dad, why weren't you here sooner? And 2, where the hell is Mom? So,
exactly.
I gotta go calm down the little dictator. But hey, I appreciate you guys as always. Keep it WFO, and Coach, appreciate you always being on here. Till Monday, make sure you guys are hitting that subscribe button and hitting the like button, right? It does help. It does, right? And it's not that hard to do. But anyway, Coach, I'll text you after the show. All right.
You got it.